Hey friends, family world, Luke here with another video. For those of you new to our channel, my husband Tyler and I make weekly videos about our different travel experiences, as well as just general information about us and our lives since we've moved from North America to Europe. Today I'm going to talk a bit more in depth about a question that we get a lot, which is how we live the lives that we live, because our lifestyle currently is a bit unconventional, especially for people our age, being 31 years old and having the opportunity to travel so much. First step, if you're gonna travel as much as we do and work your lifestyle around it, you're gonna have to make money somehow. And a lot of that is being able to find work in the country that you want to live in. For us, I'm a speech and language therapist, as it's referred to in the UK, or a speech language pathologist, as it's referred to in the US and Canada, and Tyler is a physiotherapist. The first thing we had to do was become registered with what's called the HCPC, which I think stands for the Healthcare Professionals Council, and that's kind of the main regulatory body for the entire UK for a pretty long list of occupations that work in healthcare. Before we were doing this, we were in the US and we had to do something similar, except it was a little bit harder because every state had its own license and you had to manage that. So at least for the UK, it's all one body. So regardless of if you live in Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, or England, they're all managed by the same regulatory body of HCPC. Obviously, depending on what your profession is, this will vary, but it's always a good place to start to figure out what are the steps I need to take to be able to work where I want to live, especially if you want to move to a different country for an extended period of time. Like us, we'll be here for 5 years. Step number 2 is to apply for a visa. This is obviously very important as well because you can't stay in the country and work without a visa, most likely. For us, we're very fortunate in that we qualified for what's called an ancestry visa, which is a 5-year visa for Commonwealth citizens who have a grandparent born in the UK. I'm gonna make a whole other video talking about the process for the ancestry visa because we found other videos on YouTube were very helpful, but none of them were from a Canadian perspective. So keep an eye out for that for those of you interested in learning more about what the whole process of getting an ancestry visa is like. Number 3, which is to get a job. This is probably the number 1 question of how do we travel so flexibly and so regularly and be able to make enough money to sustain ourselves. We are fortunate in our professions that they have what's called locum jobs in the UK and Ireland and what's referred to in the US as travel therapy, and that is where you do short-term contracts in different healthcare facilities for facilities that have short-term needs. So this could be a permanent employee on medical leave or maternity leave. It could also be more rural places that have a harder time getting permanent employees to live and work there full-time, but are able to meet the medical needs of their patients easier by offering shorter contracts that tend to be higher paying. So for us, this is probably the most important thing that we've done in order to live the lifestyle that we lead, which is short-term, higher paying, and more flexible jobs, working as locum therapists. But this is also very tied into what type of visa you have, because for us, the ancestry visa is not job dependent, so it doesn't require being sponsored by an employer, and it doesn't require us to be consistently working. So our visa is great in that it's not job dependent and it offers a lot of flexibility, but that will not be the same for every visa category, so definitely know what the requirements are for your visa before you expect to jump into work like this. Number 4 of things to consider when moving to a new country are bank accounts. Before we moved to the UK, we had no idea how much work it can be to get a bank account started. For some reason, we find that the UK was especially difficult opening a regular bank account without having property or any prior experience living in the UK before. before, and especially with the big banks. So for us, what we did was we went with an online bank called Monzo, which had a really easy and convenient application process that we were able to complete before we even moved to the UK, because it's all done through your mobile phone. So whatever country you're going to, look into more flexible bank accounts like that, because sometimes the bigger banks make it a lot harder to open a new bank account. Number 5 of things to consider when moving to a new country are mobile phone plans. At least for us, with getting our UK mobile phone plan started, we needed a bank account before we could open a UK mobile phone plan. It also helps to have an address set up because they will ask that information when setting up the account. We got our phone set up with EE, but there are plenty of other companies to consider. My number 6 point is a driver's license. At least for the UK, to our knowledge, you have up to a year that you can use your foreign driver's license of living in the UK before you have to go and get a UK driver's license. To cover ourselves a bit more, we also got an international driver's permit, which you can get at a AAA in the US or CAA in Canada. Although we haven't really had to use it since being here, but I have heard certain countries do require you to have it if you're trying to rent a car. A factor to consider with getting a driver's license when the time comes in the UK is that you will have to do some type of driver's test depending on what type of license you get. We learned that in the UK, they have 2 different types of driver's licenses. One is for people who want to be able to drive both automatic or manual cars, so basically be able to buy or rent any type of transmission vehicle. And then they have another license type, which is for people who are not able or don't want to drive manual vehicles and are okay with only being able to rent or buy automatic vehicles. For the manual driver's license, we would have to take an on-road driving test as well as a written test. Whereas for the automatic driver's license, we only have to do a written test. For us, because we aren't able to drive manual, and I much prefer driving automatic, we're gonna go for the automatic driver's license, but automatic cars are more expensive. So if you're someone who thinks that you're gonna be renting vehicles a lot, and if you're someone who is interested and willing to learn how to drive manual, it is certainly more cost effective, but for us, it's just not worth it. We don't like driving manual cars, so we will get the automatic one. Number 7 of things to consider when moving to a new country is getting what's referred to in the UK as a national insurance number, which is essentially the same thing as a social insurance number in Canada or a social security number in the US. And I'm sure other countries have equivalent things as well. This is important to get for payroll purposes, taxes, etc., etc. Fortunately, we found out that you don't have to have a national insurance number right from the get-go in order to start working, but it is something that you should do as soon as possible. Number 8 is getting your health card set up. This is a card that you should have just to be able to prove that you are eligible for UK health services. I find that they aren't as stringent about it as in the US or Canada. For example, when you go to a doctor's appointment, I'm used to always having to show my health card and them not even talking to me if I don't have my health card with me. Whereas here, it's a lot more relaxed in terms of your everyday appointments, but it is still a necessity to have. So if I were you, I would get that set up early on in your stay, just so that if you get sick, you can feel protected. And related to that is number 9, also getting what's referred to as a European health insurance card, or an EHIC. Now this could change at any moment with Brexit, because having an EHIC is contingent upon the UK staying in the EU. But at this point, the UK hasn't left yet, so we are eligible for an EHIC. What an EHIC is that if you're traveling outside of the UK in another EU country, you can use this card to access healthcare services in other European countries without having to pay as much as someone who is coming from a totally different country, and could potentially even be free. I believe that most of the services are charged to your home country's healthcare system, so in our case the NHS, but depending on the country that you're traveling to, there may be some out-of-pocket costs. To be honest, I don't know much about it because I haven't used it, but it is a good thing to have, especially if you plan on traveling to different countries within the EU. And finally, number 10, we would say that, again, if you're traveling around, you probably should get travel insurance just to protect yourself, because your European health insurance card may not cover everything, and having travel insurance can help support you while you're abroad. Alright guys, so that is our list of some of the things to consider when moving to a new country. Is there anything that you found when moving to the UK or a different country that you felt like you wished you knew before you moved? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you guys at our next video. Bye!